Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1117B, and today's date is November 2nd, 2016, and the title of the episode is U.S. Government is Preparing for Anarchy During and After the Election. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, we've been talking a lot about CETA, the TTIP, the TPP, and we know that CETA, well, that is a Trojan horse designed to pave the way for the TTIP. And we can see that Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, signed the CETA deal in Brussels. And we need to understand that after the elections, Obama is going to try to push the TTIP, the TPP, through. He's going to try to get it approved. And we understand that they will do whatever they have to get this through, just like they did with the Affordable Care Act and every other piece of legislation. But something very interesting about CETA is that most of the American companies, they have subsidiaries in Canada. And the current count of the number of U.S. companies that have this is around 42,000. Now, when we look at CETA and we look at the TPP, the TTIP, we can see that this is not going to help the job situation. If we look at NAFTA, NAFTA did not work. 800,000 jobs were lost in the United States, shipped overseas. And CETA, along with TTIP, well, we're going to see jobs once again lost. And they're expecting with CETA that by 2023, about 230 jobs will be lost in CETA countries, 200,000 of them in the EU and 80,000 more in the rest of the world. And we can see right now that they're not going to create jobs. It's going to have the opposite effect. Remember, these bills that they're pushing, these trade deals that they're pushing, they have nothing to do with free trade. It has to do with keeping control of governments, making sure they have the final word. When I say they, corporations, central banks, the elite, they control the governments through a one world type of government structure. This is why the internet has been passed off to the UN. This is why they want a global currency. This is why they want the TTIP and CETA passed, because this will complete what they want to do. And we can see right now with all the refugees coming into this country, and we have to remember why refugees are coming in. There's many different agendas associated with it, but one of the biggest ones is to prepare the United States for a third world country. Because as we know, what's going to happen is as the dollar is devalued, Americans are going to be very upset, and they're going to say, well, I'm not going to be doing this job for this amount of pay. Well, don't worry. We have a refugee, an illegal immigrant, to take your place. And there is going to be a transition of this. I mean, we're already seeing what Obama has laid out for law enforcement. Now, it sounds good on the surface, where he wants to push to hire minorities in the police forces. And everyone says, yes, we have to have diversity. Yes, that sounds great. So, Obama is asking the nation's 18,000 law enforcement agencies to forgive drug use, disregard the criminal records of candidates, and lower the standards on written and physical exam. It's all part of his Advanced Diversity in Law Enforcement initiative. Let's think about this for a second. He's going to allow maybe illegal immigrants, refugees with criminal records, with drug use, to become law enforcement officers. Shouldn't we have people live up to a higher expectation than lowering the expectation to bring in more people? Why would we do this? Why in the world would they want to lower the requirements to become a police officer? Think about that for a second. Wouldn't you say that people would have to strive to hit the high requirements to become a police officer? Can you imagine if we did this around the country? Let's say you wanted to go to college. Well, to let people into college, instead of 1,000 or 1,100 on the SATs, we'll just use that as an example, you only have to score 400. And then we will allow everyone to come in. Well, what does that do to the colleges? Well, it lowers their rating. What happens to the police officers? Well, we're going to get criminals, drug users, as officers of the law. And in California, guess what? They're doing it right now. Because they're going along with what Obama wants. And we can see right now that they don't care. They want these individuals that they can control, because this is not going to be a police force that belongs to the neighborhood, that has families in the neighborhood. This is going to be a police force that will do criminal activity. This is going to be a police force around the country, not just in one area, that is controlled by the federal government to control the people, and they will do whatever they need to do to control the people. You can see where this is going. You can see what their plans are. And right now, we can see we're heading down a very dangerous path. And at this point, people should be screaming at the top of their lungs, absolutely not. We will not lower the requirements. We will not give these individuals a job as a police officer if they're a drug user, if they have criminal records. And we're not going to lower the standards to become a police officer, but they want anyone in. If you notice, they do the same thing with buying a house. Didn't they lower the requirements and they allowed subprime people in? Didn't they also do this with automobiles? And what happens in the end? The whole thing just falls apart. Well, the same thing's going to happen. But they're preparing us once again to be a third world country. They're preparing for anarchy. And they need certain individuals that won't question, that won't think, that will just do. And that's what the U.S. government, the central bankers, are doing right now. They're taking control of the police forces. They're taking control of the internet. They're taking control of the worldwide currency. They're taking control of everything they can get their hands on, because they want full control and they want to maintain control. And when they maintain control, and if you look in other countries that the United States has invaded and had regime change, you can see how they treat the people who oppose what they're doing. They drone them, they kill them, they call them terrorists. I don't think I have to say any more. Now, out in the Philippines, we understand that Duterte, he is pulling away from the United States, and we can see right now the United States is telling the Philippines that we are no longer going to sell you assault rifles. And we can see that Duterte says the following to the United States. Look at these monkeys. The 26,000 firearms we wanted to buy, they don't want to sell it to us. Don't they realize that we have homemade guns here? We can create them ourselves. We don't need the Americans. Now, we see what the State Department is doing. They're putting pressure on Duterte, holding back, not providing them with weapons. And we can see that the United States government central bankers, they are completely against going after drug dealers, going after drug producers, because as we know, the United States government, the CIA, and other agencies are in this country dealing the drugs. Actually, the United States government, they are the biggest dealer of drugs around the world. And the war on drugs is a war on all the other drug distributors. So the CIA and other agencies can distribute narcotics. Out in South Sudan, the UN brought in about, 4,000 or so peacekeeper troops. They're supposed to protect the citizens there, and there was an independent investigation because in July there were deadly clashes in South Sudan, and they realized that the UN military that was supposed to be there to protect civilians, well, guess what? They didn't protect anybody. And we reported on this a while back, where we're saying that these soldiers that they are now bringing into countries, they're not there to protect the civilians. They're there to control the situation, to control and to be used as force later on. And we're starting to see that this is actually evident of what is going on. Out in Ukraine, the United States says they're not going to be taking part in the Normandy format negotiations. They said, don't worry about it. This is coming from U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yananovich, saying that we're going to be talking to Ukraine, but we're not going to be involved in the Normandy talks. You know, we already had the coup d'etat in Ukraine. We spent $5 billion. We don't want peace there. We want the southeastern section. We want Crimea. And we're going to be talking to Kiev to start a major offensive, because we see NATO is in Ukraine. They are testing the latest weapons in this area, and they're working with military personnel. We are seeing that Kiev has redeployed about 2,000 mercenaries to the contact line. And right now, this is all in preparation. They're just waiting for the green light to go. We see the Iraqi army. This major battle in Mosul, where the United States is helping the Islamic State flee Mosul into Syria, up into Raqqa, and then over to Aleppo. Well, the Iraqi army, they have discovered a number of U.S.-made missiles from a military position of the Islamic State in the southern part of Mosul. Now, of course, people are saying, how did these U.S. weapons get there? It's not something where you can just find on the street. Because what has been happening is the U.S. has been supplying the Islamic State, which is their paid mercenary group, with weapons. And we're seeing more and more evidence of this. We see Russia and Turkey. They are contemplating a free trade pact in 2017. Now, Turkey is playing both sides of the coin here. They're working with Russia, making economic deals. They're also working with the United States in Syria because they don't know how this is going to play out. But we can see right now that Turkey is making sure that they are winners no matter how this plays out. We see that Putin is saying on November 4th he's going to be opening up 2 corridors in Aleppo to allow humanitarian aid to be brought in. And this is going to happen between 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. on November 4th. And of course, the United States is going to tell us that, they're still bombing. They're not allowing humanitarian aid into this area. But what we're really seeing, and this is coming from a leaked video, it shows that militants, the Islamic State, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, the moderate rebels, they are charging civilians money to leave the area. When you look at the footage in the video, the moderate rebels, they're charging civilians about $300 to leave Aleppo. And if they don't pay, they're being picked off by snipers. Now, we understand the United States government central bankers, they are backed in a corner. Right now, Russia and Syria, they have liberated over 4,500 square miles of Syria, and they removed the terrorists. They've liberated about 900 settlements, and we can see right now that the United States government central bankers, they're running into a problem because they're starting to realize that the amount of territory and the rate that Russia and Syria are pushing through the terrorist groups, that they only have a certain amount of time left inside of Syria. And what we're seeing right now is the moderate rebels, the terrorist groups, Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, and the rest, well, they're receiving new weapons. Terrorist groups have been spotted with new state-sponsored weapons. And we're seeing weapons like the Turkish Har-66 anti-tank rocket launchers, and we can see that they're being resupplied right now. Because the United States, they have few options left. And we mentioned these, that one is just to leave, let Assad take over the country. The United States never reaches Iran. The petrodollar just collapses. People point the finger at the central bank and the U.S. government and say, look what you've just done. Or they create an event. They go to war. And we can see right now that these individuals, they just want to reach their goal any way they possibly can. They just don't give up. And they are willing and ready to go to war. Now, Putin is saying, listen, we want the terrorists out of Aleppo. We will give you until Friday evening. And if you're not going to leave, you will be destroyed. And we can see right now that the UN, they're realizing that the US-backed rebels and the other terrorist groups, they're murdering civilians. We see United Nations Special Envoy for Syria stated that he is appalled and shocked by the high number of rockets indiscriminately launched by armed opposition groups, which have killed hundreds of civilians in Aleppo during the recent weeks. This entire thing is falling apart right in front of the United States government central bankers' eyes. More and more people are noticing, more and more people are realizing what is happening, and you can see that once they're pushed far enough into the corner, they're going to come out with their claws. And they will create an event of all events. And we're getting close to that time period. We see Russia and Syria, they're sending in elite units to catch terrorists. They're sending in the Special Tiger Forces in Aleppo, the Desert Falcons Brigade. They're bringing in T-90 tanks into Aleppo. They're preparing for a major battle in this area to clean out the rest of the terrorists. And we know the United States government central bankers, they're keeping eyes on everything, because remember last month the Pentagon launched a new satellite, the Battlespace Awareness Center satellite. It is online, and it is a space-based infrared system that can conduct surveillance on the U.S. enemies around the globe. And they're keeping an eye on countries like Iraq, Libya, Yemen, North Korea, Syria, and Ukraine. You know, all the countries where they had regime change or they want regime change. They're keeping an eye on everything. So when something happens and they say, oh, we don't understand how this happened or we don't know why, well, yeah, they do. They're watching everything all the time. We see the U.S. is warning that there could be a possible attack in India from the Islamic State. Remember, India is part of the BRIC nation. And they're telling all U.S. citizens in India to maintain a high level of vigilance and increase their security awareness, which means the United States is going to do something in India. Now, in the corporate media, they're making a really big deal that during these elections, and we have about 1 week to go or so, that certain individuals might cause trouble during the elections or after the elections. They're saying that there's militias that are forming right now, and they may cause horrific violence during or after the elections, depending on who wins and who loses. And the U.S. government right now is preparing for this. Because you have to remember, Trump is out there saying that these elections are rigged, they're manipulated, and most of the country realizes that there is some type of manipulation. Some people are completely in the dark saying, no, these are honest elections. All you have to do is look at Hacking Democracy with Bev Harris. You can see how they do it. And what we're seeing right now is they're building the narrative that people are going to cause problems after the election, or maybe even during the election. And we can see right now they're getting prepared to use the government to control the situation. And they're pointing out many different cities around the country. And we can see right now that when the situation goes hot, we know there's going to be agent provocateurs trying to create this type of problem. Now, there are certain militias that are out there who are forming, but they're saying that, listen, we're not going to be doing anything. We're just getting ready and prepared because we understand that the U.S. government, they're going to be trying to do something. They're getting ready to create an incident during these elections. And remember, the U.S. government, the central bankers, they will do whatever is necessary to get the person they want into the White House. We know it's not Trump. I mean, it's completely obvious. And to me, at this point, it doesn't really matter who gets into the White House. I mean, certain things are going to happen much sooner than if another person gets in there. But we know that these elite, these neocons, they don't give up. They don't run very easily. They take care of business. Look at all the actions that they have done over the past 100 of years. They will kill, they will remove that individual that poses a threat to their authority. They will manipulate and create an incident and stop whatever is happening. They don't care. They're not just going to pack up and say, oh, look, Trump is in office. Guess what? We give up. No, they're not going to do that. Most likely, if that individual doesn't go along with their plans, that individual will be removed. And we can see right now, the shadow government, the deep state, they are in control right now. We need to remove the shadow government. We need to remove the deep state. We need to remove the central bank. Because until we can do that, they are holding all the cards. They're holding all the keys to each and every one of these doors. And we can see right now, they most likely are preparing for something to go hot during or after the election. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.